In these uncertain economic times, it's easy to be worried about protecting your wealth, your hard-earned savings, and your family's financial future. Plunging interest rates, the devaluating dollar, and political unrest constantly threaten what you have worked hard to earn and all that you own. That's why now it's more important than ever to protect your assets and have the money you need to make your dreams come true. Welcome to the Global Wealth Fortress Report with successful global entrepreneur and wealth preservation expert Joel Nagel. Joel's helped thousands of people just like you protect what you have so that you can make even more and make your every dream come true. So, sit back and enjoy Joel Nagel's offshore expert advice on how you can live the good life at a great price, where the sun never sets on your financial fortress.
Hello, and welcome to Joel Nagel's Global Wealth Fortress Report. We're going to do this thing today because I have a heck of a article that Joel wrote. There it is, for techinsideout.co. And we're going to talk to Joel about it because the insights in this article on the cryptocurrency are going to be a tremendous benefit directly to you as you look offshore. Joel, welcome. How are you today?
Hey, Carter. Great. I'm actually over in Europe. I've spent the last few days in one of the most beautiful cities on the planet, Paris. And, it's haven't been here in 3 years. So it's interesting to see some of the changes, but then, other things never change. So it's been great to be here.
So the Eiffel Tower is still there, I take it.
The Eiffel Tower is still there. Actually, it looks like they cleaned it a bit since I've seen it last, and they have a nice light show that they do at the top of the hour at night, where the lights kind of twinkle and sparkle, and it really makes the Eiffel Tower look great. But
I think it's taller than the Washington Monument, isn't it?
Yeah, I believe so. I don't have the height off the top of my tips of my finger, but yes,
I think it is. I one of these days I'm going to have to go up in it and have a look for myself. When I was a kid, I actually took the steps up the Washington Monument. If I tried that today, they'd be sending the ambulance to bring me back down.
Yeah, I'm not. Can you even do that anymore? I'm not sure.
I'm sure you can't.
I remember before you could, but I'm not sure. But I think the stairs are closed now. But
I think you're probably right. So today, this article you wrote for techinsideout.co. It's .co, folks, not .com. It's just a great article. Joe, your insights in the cryptocurrency, folks. It's called "Bitcoin Cryptocurrency Might Just Be the Solution to Poverty in Undeveloped Countries." And Joel goes into chapter and verse here. And the flip side of that is, Joel, for people who are thinking of moving or investing into these countries, it can mean a financial windfall. What do you think?
Well, first I chuckled because Gary shot up that it's 1,083 feet. So thank you, Gary, for throwing that up. So yeah, it's about 100 stories. So it makes sense. Yeah. Let me just preface it by saying I'm the classic old dog who's learned a new trick with Bitcoin. I've been in the asset protection space for the last 33 years, and you get to a point in your career where you do more or less the same things over and over, and you talk to people about gold and real estate, and then along comes crypto and Bitcoin. And I can remember, in the early days, 2010, 11, people were saying, hey, I'd like to hire you. I'd like to pay you in Bitcoin. And of course, I made the same mistake everyone else made. I said, no, I'm not really interested in what Warren Buffett called the internet funny money. But, we see that's not the case. And, we've talked before on the show, why it's valuable. I don't think we have to rehash that today, but
right.
For those who maybe haven't seen that episode, we talked about, among other things, the fact that governments can't print it. It's in the case of Bitcoin, there's a finite amount. So when you have infinite amount of money printing, And let's face it, whether you're talking about the dollar or the euro or the yen or the ruble, doesn't matter what currency you're talking about, governments have the power to just turn the printing presses on. They don't have to, they don't have to sell assets. They don't have to raise taxes, which is great for politicians. They just turn on the money printers and away we go, right? But what they're really doing is they're stealing in a sort of stealth way the value of our hard-earned dollars. And, you know, we went from silver to non-silver coins in 1964. We went off the gold standard in 1973. And so, you know, we've basically systematically removed the elements to our currency that made our currency valuable. Okay.
Right.
Now that's one thing that affects, I think most of our viewers, but you have to also imagine there's this other dimension. You have vast parts of the world. I saw a statistic not long ago. 2/3 of the people in the world don't have bank accounts. They don't have access to banks. You know, if you live in the tundra of Africa or, you know, crowded cities in Southeast Asia, many parts of the world, developed and undeveloped, simply don't have banks, and people don't have access to bank accounts. And what does that mean? You know, it means it's very difficult to save, to invest, to borrow. You know, they you know, it's the you know, get a little cash and stick it under your mattress and hope that nobody steals it. So that's the condition that most people are living in. And so, you know, when I started to really understand Bitcoin, I understood it really from two completely different perspectives. One is from the perspective of the individual investor, why it's a good asset protection tool, right? Right. And I love talking about that. I think that's what we mostly talk about on this show.
Yes.
For all the things that we said. But then you have this other development, and I think that's what maybe we want to talk about a little bit today, which is helping people in parts of the world to get access to capital, to be able to save, to spend. And I think, you know, Bitcoin's done that, and the other cryptocurrencies. And, you know, it's not a perfect solution. You know, I'm not here to say that there's no nefarious conduct that happens anywhere in the world using crypto. Although, you know, the Treasury Secretary Yellen came out and sort of disparaged Bitcoin a number of months ago, and the former CIA director wrote a much more thorough, convincing article that completely rebutted what she said. And not to go into all the details, but basically said, look, when you do a transaction in crypto, it's on what's called the blockchain. Now, you and I, when we look at the blockchain, we might not know everything, but everything is there. Who sent the money and who received the money. And on the blockchain, it's there forever.
Yes.
So think about that. Is that a very good tool for criminal organizations to use? No, I don't think so. They would much rather use things like cash, right? If you walk into a drug deal and you hand over a bag full of cash and you walk out, nobody can ever say that it came from you or who received it, how much was in the bag. Nobody knows. But with crypto, that's not the case. It's known forever and all time, the address of the wallet that sent the payment and the address that received it. And eventually, you know, when law enforcement gets involved, they look at one person, they look at another and another and another, and they can trace it back. And you know, even if it takes some years, they can figure out who did what and who paid whom and exactly how much. So it's really not a great tool for criminals, but it's a great tool for the unbanked. You know, the women who sew clothes in the slums of India, right, and make, you know, a couple dollars a day, they can now get paid instantly in Bitcoin, and they can use that to buy food for their families. And you know, El Salvador was really the poster child for all of this. You know, going back to before the president announced that it was going to be legal currency, you know, a few years ago, even before COVID started, we have an area called El Zonte on the Pacific coast of El Salvador, It's a beach community. Now it's affectionately referred to as Bitcoin Beach.
Yep.
And
Yep.
you know, the promoters and the foundations that got involved, you know, provided up to $30 a week to families during COVID, but in Bitcoin. And they just had to promise they could spend the Bitcoin, they could save the Bitcoin, but they weren't supposed to cash out the Bitcoin. And they were trying to show that Bitcoin could become a circular, dynamic economy. And they discovered that people were able, for the very first time in their lives, to save. Imagine that people now could save. You know, had little old ladies running taco stands, selling their tacos, using the Bitcoin to buy the ingredients. And at the end of the day, there was something left over, and they didn't have to go to a bank. So when I look
this was before, right? This was before Bukele made it Bitcoin legal currency.
Yeah, it was really the poster child, the model. The Bitcoin Beach was going on for about 2 years, and the folks who did that, the godfather, so to speak, of Bitcoin Beach was a guy by the name of Mike Peterson.
Mike
Got to
Peterson,
know him.
right? Yep.
He's a great guy. Excuse me. He was on the cover of Escape Artist magazine a number of months ago. Great guy. We're working with him on Bitcoin Beach now from the development side. But, you know, he was able to show that all these positive benefits. And the president looked at that and said, well, why wouldn't we want that for the whole rest of the country? And, you know, he knew there was going to be naysayers. He knew other governments wouldn't like it, probably knew the US wouldn't like it. The IMF didn't like it. The World Bank didn't like it, you know, on and on and on, for a variety of reasons. But one of the reasons is that, you know, the establishment likes the status quo, and the international organizations can manipulate the behavior of countries by how they wield these international organizations and where they put the dollars, how they spend them, how they loan them. And so the IMF came out and said, hey, Bukele, if you do this, we're going to suspend loans to your country.
Yeah.
But think about a loan is something you have to pay back, right?
Yeah.
So when the IMF took that position, massive numbers of Bitcoin aficionados and many of the so-called whales, right? These are early adapters who are sitting on thousands and in some cases tens of thousands of Bitcoins. They started flooding into El Salvador. I have very good friends there that said every day the planes would pull up and, you know, 200, 20, 30, 40-year-old, mostly guys, but women too, got off with their Bitcoin t-shirts and they headed off to look to see how they were going to invest. So
in El Salvador.
So El Salvador lost the IMF loans, but they gained essentially wealthy people from all over the world coming in to invest. So if you're El Salvador, what do you prefer, loans or investment?
And they got the investment. I think, you know, let's be clear, folks. Everything that Joel's telling you right now, a lot of that is in this great article. So, you know, make sure to check it out. Make sure when Joel was talking about it, you know, the folks that didn't have banking, and it created a way for them to save and to trade. Look, one of the sentences, it gave a chance to these people. I think that the community you're talking about was created in the article. You say the fill the tank up with love, right? Is one of the articles, one of the agencies you mentioned. And as you said, a circular currency for people who don't have access to bank accounts, and they learn to pay for medical care, food, clothing, utility bills, all with the Bitcoin now, which is just fantastic. And folks, let's bring it home to the folks who are watching here. That means when you go there, you are going into a much sounder economy now, an economy you can invest in, which is just fantastic, which is just great. It has opened up a new world of opportunity.
Yeah, think about it. I mean, Bitcoin is a true asset. It's like gold or silver or land or all the other assets that we could name. A dollar bill is technically not an asset. If you pull a dollar bill out of your wallet right now and you read what it says on it, doesn't matter which denomination, it says this debt instrument.
Yes.
dollar
Yes.
is a debt instrument. So it creates cycles of debt. And if you think about it, that's essentially what it starts with the Federal Reserve. It starts with the government through the banks who loan the money to you. And it's a debt instrument that forces you to, obviously pay it back. If you buy US government treasuries, that again is supposed to be an asset, and you own a 10-year treasury that pays you, 2.5%, that's really no asset at all, is it? Because
No.
you know that inflation is going to chew up the value of that asset. Whereas today, the Federal Reserve announced an interest rate hike. Okay, what happened? Gold went up. It went up about 1.2, 1.3%.
Right.
Bitcoin, what did it do? Shot up about between 5 and 6%. So it
Great.
shows you that Bitcoin is becoming more and more accepted as an alternative to fiat currency. And the more damage that the government does to the currency, which let's face it, that's what they're doing, right? It's damage.
That's what they're doing.
They're making it worth less and less and less every time they print it. Inflation's going up. I don't think anybody from top to bottom can say, no matter how much money you're making this year versus how much money you made last year, you're not keeping up with inflation. You're just not.
There's no way.
So
There's no
so
way. Real wages are down 3.3% because of the inflation.
So when you buy into, a currency like Bitcoin, and that's what Bitcoin is, it's a currency, right? And just like gold, it's not necessarily the fact that Bitcoin's going up, although it does the way we measure it, but it's really the fact that the dollar's going down. And that's what I expect. So as the dollar becomes worth less, not necessarily worthless, but worth less, I think you're going to see Bitcoin, the other major cryptocurrencies, continue to increase. I read projections all the time, 100,000, 200,000, million. I mean, over time, as more and more dollars get printed, as more and more people want out of the fiat currency world, all the way down to the taco vendor in El Salvador, she's going to accept Bitcoin. She's not going to take dollars.
That's exactly right. And I was reading a great article. Doug Casey, obviously. I'm tremendous admirers of him. And great article by Nick Giambruno there, where he points out that in the days following the COVID, the announcement by Fauci of the COVID hysteria, the government the Fed printed up more than $4 trillion and doubled the U.S. currency supply in less than a year, more than it had done in the previous 250 years. Well, that devalues the dollar, just what you were saying. Great article today.
People can't even fathom that number. I read a story about $1 trillion, and it said that if you went back to 2,000 years ago when Jesus was walking the earth, and you passed out 1,000 US dollars every second from then until now, you would just now be getting to 1 trillion. So think about that. When people throw around 3 trillion, 5 trillion, let's just spend another couple $100 billion on this or that. People completely lose track of what that really means. I mean, Biden's last announcement where he said we were giving Ukraine 33 billion or whatever. It's 33 billion amongst friends. Like that's I forget what the number, but it's like $12,000 per person.
Yeah, at a time when we're running a $2 to $3 trillion deficits in this country. And the other day I was watching Grant Cardone. He had a great illustration. He pulled up a $1,000 bill. He loves to keep major bills on his desk, and he said, if you took this $1,000 bill in 1970 and put it in your desk drawer, when you pulled it out today, thanks to government, it would now be worth $120.
Yeah, exactly.
$120.
I mean, gold, whether you're a gold bug or not, instead of measuring things in dollars, if you measure things in like 1 ounce of gold, let's say a gold coin, right? In 1920, with your $1,000 bill, because there are $1,000 bills that were circulating then, they're still legal tender, but they don't really circulate. They're mostly held by collectors and banks or whatever. But with that $1,000 bill, you could go get exactly 50 ounces of gold.
All right.
That's 1920 because it's $20
Right.
to an ounce of gold. So 20 times 50 is 1,000. Now, fast forward a little over 100 years later, if you still had that $1,000 bill, maybe it would have gone up because of from a collector standpoint. But if you just went to the gold dealer and said, "Here's my $1,000, give me gold," guess what? You're not getting 50 ounces; you're getting half an ounce. So, in gold terms, the dollar's down 90. I think it's it's like 98% or whatever that math ends up being, between 98 and 99%. So yeah, we think that gold's going up, but in reality, gold's staying the same. 100 years ago, an ounce of gold could buy a finely tailored man's suit, and 100 years later, an ounce of gold can buy a finely tailored man's suit. So gold is a unit. It's a purchasing power unit.
Yeah.
The dollar used to be that, it was pegged 20 to an ounce of gold. Then under FDR, almost doubled, and then it stayed that way from the 30s until the 70s when Nixon took us off the gold standard. So that was called the era of sound money, meaning governments couldn't print because they had to have, the peg. They had to have so much gold sitting at Fort Knox or in the Federal Reserve to offset for every dollar that they put in circulation. But that's gone. Those days are over, and the government can print whatever it wants. It's worth money only because we believe it's worth money. But now you can see that there's definitely cracks in the dike, and whenever you hear inflation numbers, interest rate numbers. And the government lies about all those things. I mean,
all of it.
That's not Republicans or Democrats. They all want to make the picture look as rosy as possible. But that's really not the case. If you look at something like shadow statistics, which is a much better analytical tool to look
John Williams.
Real inflation.
Yeah.
I mean, we had one of the guys one day. He was at one of our conferences, and he said, "Yeah, the government's numbers are accurate if you take out food, transportation, utilities." I don't know. There's a list of things that, of course, everybody uses every day, but they weren't included in the matrix that the government uses to calculate inflation. So
yeah,
here we are.
I think Williams at Shadow Stats says it's really 15 to 20%, and which goes right to an article that we had mentioned right before we came on. Today, a guy that Joel and I both follow, a very smart guy, Jim Rickards. Joel, let me just read you what he says. The dollar collapse is happening in front of our eyes. Just what you just said, Joel, just what you just said. It's no longer a matter of a major event on the horizon. It's occurring real time. Russia just linked its ruble to gold rate at 5,000 rubles to 1 gram of gold. So it's going on the gold standard while we're off of it. China's discussing with Saudi Arabia the prospect of paying for oil in how do you pronounce it? Yuan.
Yeah, or the renminbi, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, and coming back full circle, on the other hand, you have what you've written about here in this article that talks about where currency is being used that is increasing in its value and is a solid currency that can't be printed in as fiat, which is just fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that mainstream people who go to work and work 9 to 5, come home and watch the news and watch a sporting event, they feel this, but they're not really that in the know of what's happening. And as more and more people understand what's happening, I think Rickards refers to it as the snowflake of theory, right? The snowflakes are coming down, each one's pretty and each one's pretty harmless, quite frankly. But at some point, the snowflakes build up to the point, that you trigger an avalanche. And you don't really know which snowflake is going to trigger the avalanche, but in fact, it is just one. You just don't know which one it is, right?
Yeah.
And I think we're entering that phase now. Programs like this, Escape Artist, other publications that are writing about this, more and more people are kind of in the know. And that's when I was just meeting with very wealthy client and friend here in Paris, and he had the same fears and anxieties that your viewers, have. Just because you have money doesn't mean you're willing to let it see it evaporate and go away. You're trying to protect it, and that's what I find interesting. It really doesn't matter what amount of money you have. You want to protect what you have, and that's what my business is all about. And it's really the empathy that I feel towards anyone to try to help them do that. And I think the more knowledge you have about what the attacks on your wealth is, the better you can understand what you need to do to defend yourself, protect yourself, and even profit. And I think that is one of the things that I do like about cryptocurrency. I think it's still very volatile. I mean, it goes up and down all the time. You can have an ulcer if you try to follow it on a daily basis.
Right.
I think
right.
in the future that the ups and downs will get smaller and smaller as it becomes more adopted by people. But as it becomes more adopted by people, it's certainly only going to go in one direction because it's a finite number, right? So, you have infinite numbers of dollars changing
Right.
finite numbers of Bitcoin. So, economics 101 says it can only go in one direction.
Which is great. So what you have told to your wealthy clients now, the Joel Nagel's advice, see if I'm summing it up for this show as we close here. Be careful. How am I going to put this in a way that's not overstated? Be careful about putting your money into dollars, right? The dollar's in trouble. Yeah.
Well, the dollar's in trouble. I think that if you're invested in dollars in something productive, hey, you could be in the US stock market in a great stock, and the value of that stock might outpace inflation. You might pick well. But if you don't pick anything and you're sitting there with your money in the bank, I think the average bank account right now, even on CDs, is paying like 0.15% or something like
right.
that.
Yeah.
It's a crazy number. You are guaranteed to lose money with that. So the question is, what solutions are you going to take? You could pick winners in the stock market, but not everybody picks a winner, right? You can pick losers too. Or you could move into stable, sources of wealth, things like gold, things like silver, things like Bitcoin. And those things do go up and down. They're volatile. So, I can't tell you next week, next month, whether it's going to be higher or lower. But if we project out 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, I think all of those things will be, substantially more valuable because the dollar will be worth less, right?
Yes.
Gold will probably still only get you a finely tailored man's suit. What that amount will be, I don't know. It could be 5,000, 10,000, 50,000, 100,000. We talked about the fact that the Reichsmark went from 100 Reichsmarks to 100 trillion Reichsmarks for an ounce of gold in 2 years. So could that happen in the US? I hope not, but it could. So what that value is, I don't know, but it's going to be more than it is now.
It's going to be more than just now. So we talk about checking the gold, protect your assets with gold, maybe protect your assets with Bitcoin, and maybe, as this article seems to suggest, maybe even with some offshore investments in somewhere like El Salvador. Sound good?
Exactly.
All right.
Well,
Joel,
thanks for talking about that. I appreciate you reading it, and hopefully some of your viewers will read the article too. It's like I said, I was a little bit late to the game, but I'm proof that old dogs really can learn new tricks. And hopefully some of your readers that are over 25 will realize that they can as well.
Well, I think we have a lot of old dog readers, viewers at the Offshore Club, including this old dog. And I'm happy to learn the tricks from you. So thank you very much.
Brian.
Excellent. Excellent,
Great
folks.
to be with you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, folks. Check it out. Check out the article, okay, at techinsideout.co. If you go there now, the article's front and center. Check it out, read it, take Joel's advice. As you notice, same advice he said he's given to some of his wealthy clients. So, as I tell you in each show, let's do this thing.